This is CTR from VGM Rapes, and you're listening to Pixelated Audio, episode 62, featuring Quattro Play.
All right, welcome back. This is Pixelated Audio, the bi-weekly video game music and retro gaming podcast. I'm Brian, and this is James.
Today we're doing a spotlight feature on music produced by the Namco C352 sound chip in conjunction with a new playback and logging tool called Quattro Play.
Yes, Quattro Play, which we'll hear about soon, was created by our guest host and good friend known to the internet by the name CTR. He's a very integral part of VGM Rips and the VGM ripping scene, and his knowledge of the hardware is matched by very few.
Right. We're super excited to have you on the show with us today, so thanks for joining in.
Hello, thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah, no. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself? How'd you get interested in game audio?
That's a hard question, because I don't know myself.
I don't think any of us actually know. Did you play games when you were growing up and it just kind of stuck with you, or?
Yes, I played Ridge Racer, in fact.
That's awesome. That was the track that started us off.
Yeah, so the track that brought us in was Ridge Racer Power Remix, composed by Shinji Hosoe for Ridge Racer.
I think you mean Ridge Racer! Sorry.
Remember that one?
Yeah. Sorry, I had to do it.
Yeah. Anyway, this game was released in 1993, published and developed by Namco for the System 22 arcade hardware using the C352 sound chip.
I thought this track is awesome because this game is totally awesome. Now, CTR, this was your pick. Why this track?
Well, it's the theme song of Ridge Racer, and I thought the game in particular was pretty suitable because it was one of the first games to have used the sound chip.
Yeah, no, I think there was only one before it, right?
Yeah, one before. No, that game was only released in Japan and the US, and probably limited release anyway.
Yeah. So this sound, though, I think is amazing. The guitar riffs are just really clean. You get that slow kind of groove section, and then really just awesome keyboard solo that I think it just goes wild.
Oh yeah, I love when that keyboard it like fades out. There's like an echo of it as the song continues playing. But I think for me, I love the way that this sounds. It really reminds me of arcades, racers in general. Also like golf tunes, because it has a little bit of like an elevator-ish sound to it, where it's very kind of up tempo, but still very smooth, and it's not doesn't give you stress or anything like that, which I really liked. Really smooth instruments, and there's like this tinny kind of fake sound to stuff that doesn't quite sound like real instruments, but that's what I love about it. It's what really reminds me this is like game music and not just a real band just sitting there that's being piped into the game.
Yeah. So CTR, tell us your thoughts about this track.
Well, my thoughts about this track is it's quite long, and it fits the game pretty well, even though they changed the sound quite a bit for the future games in the series.
Right. Like the later Ridge Racer 2, Rave Racer, stuff like that. It does switch it up a lot.
Yeah, it's much more techno-like in those games. This game is more, well, not so much techno, but still a bit synth, I guess.
Yeah. And this was composed by Shinji Hosoe. We have another track from him later on, so we'll talk more about him in a bit. But this was released, like James said, in 1993, developed and published by Namco, and it was for the Namco System 22. And this arcade was it brings me back, like listening to this track, because all across America we had Ridge Racer in most arcades. It wasn't like the massive cabinet, because it came in 2 iterations.
Yeah, that massive cabinet is huge. It has like a full-size car and plenty of space in this massive screen.
It's like a theater.
Yeah, I mean, even the regular arcade machine was big, and I mean, it had the 3 screens in the seat. But I mean, this game was definitely a huge heavy hitter as far as racing arcade games. The tracks take place in a fictional city called Ridge City, where you get to race through the streets, which kind of remind me a little bit of games like Gran Turismo and stuff like that, where they kind of block off the streets and let you go racing. I mean, one cool feature about this game was it allowed you to drift and stuff like that, so it kind of keep your speed up in the corners. It's a really awesome game. It just really reminds me of a lot of early racing games with the 3D stuff like that, which I really liked.
I think that for me, like this game, I did play it in the arcades, but my fondest memories are actually playing the PlayStation port. That's where I got most of the time in, and I think you did as well. I
just recently purchased this. I didn't even realize it was going to be on our list for this episode, but I did just recently grab it for PlayStation.
That's funny. Did you ever play this game in the arcade, CTR?
Not this game. I only played the PS1 version.
Arcades like a big thing over there? I'm not quite sure.
No, there's 2 arcades in the whole of Sweden where I live. The arcade disappeared a long time ago.
Yeah, ours are still kind of hanging on just a little bit.
They're dwindling, but they're pretty much in the dying state. Anyways, total blast to play. If you have a chance, if you ever see this in the arcade, you definitely should pop in some quarters and give it a shot if it's still working. But we're going to be talking about a lot of aspects of Quattro Play over the course of this episode, and we've been playing with it. I've been playing with it. James has been playing with it. Been listening to music, having a blast. But I'm sure everybody listening is thinking, like, what is Quattro Play?
Yeah, but I guess better yet, let's start with the sound chip and then go Quattro Play. I think it'll make a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
The chip is one of those custom chips that pretty much every arcade manufacturer did at the time, because they wanted to push down costs by making their own chips.
Right.
And having a sound chip is pretty important for arcade games. Even though you don't hear the music very much, you still wanted good music.
Yeah. Right. Like every time we were just in California Extreme, and there's so many arcades there, you can't even solo out music from one game.
Right.
Because it's just a constant, like, noise across the whole floor, you know?
Yeah, I mean, most times when you go to an arcade, it's not just 1 or 2 games.
Oh,
They might have, 5 or 6, or they're all pushed really close together.
Yeah, it's when you get lucky and you go to like a pizza parlor and there's like the one and everybody else is quiet and you get to just enjoy that arcade by itself.
And that's why Japanese arcade machines have headphone ports, so you can just plug headphones in and listen to the sounds.
Yeah. God, so jealous. I wish we would have had stuff like that. Anyways, so the C352.
Yeah, it's the successor to the earlier C140 and the C219 sound chips. And this one has 32 voices, which is quite a bit for a sound chip at the time.
Well, 32, and I mean, this is what, 1992, 1983. I mean, that's a ton.
Yeah.
At the time, Konami's best sound chip only had 8 voices.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sega, well, they weren't using their own sound chip at the time. They had one, but they kind of stopped using it, and they started using Yamaha sound chips instead. And anyway, the C352, it has one weakness, and it can't play 16-bit samples. It can only play 8-bit samples. But it has this encoding thing where 12-bit samples can be compressed into 8-bit samples called Mural. And this game used it for the voices only, but a few other games used it for the music instruments as well.
Now, so could you tell us about like how they would actually use these samples? Because the whole sound chip is actually just sample based, and Namco is using basically 8-bit samples continuously.
Yes, the earlier System 2 arcade boards did have a Yamaha FM sound chip, but I guess for cost reasons they didn't use it anymore on the System 22 and so on. So they only used this chip, but they could use quite a lot of memory for the samples. They had 16 megabytes, but they didn't use all of it in the beginning.
Back then, most arcade games weren't even that big. So.
Yeah.
So they had, for first arcade games using this chip, usually had 2 to 4 megabytes of samples. And that's still enough for quite good quality instruments and voices.
Okay, so then that brings us over to Quattro Play. What exactly is Quattro Play, and how does this Namco C352 chip kind of fit into the mix?
Well, I begin with Quattro, which is the name of the sound driver that they used at the time.
Right, and why Quattro?
I don't know why. It's the name. The name was written into the ROMs, so I know that the sound driver had that name, but I didn't know why they used it.
Okay.
Well, the name is kind of based it on another program called SMPS Play, and that's a player for Sega's SMPS sound driver. And I don't know where the name for that came from anyway, but the player is called SMPS Play, so I went with Quattro Play because it's the play thing at the end, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. It's somewhat consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Quattro Play also is really unique because you don't only get the 2 stereo channels. Quattro can actually do 4 channels because the sound chip actually has 2 DACs. And maybe you could give us a little bit of information on that.
Yeah, it has an option for 2 external DACs. Most arcade games only had 1 external DAC because you don't need more if you don't have stereo or mono speakers.
Right.
But for a big deluxe cabinet and so on, they wanted to have more than 2 speakers. So they had 2 DACs, so they could have volume controls for the front and rear speakers.
Yeah. So what's really cool about this is, let's say you're in a sit-down racing cabinet and you have the 2 stereo speakers in front of you. You could get almost 2 surround speakers behind you,
right,
and have 4 different speakers giving 4 different sounds, all kind of in one. And it makes it a really kind of live experience. I think it makes it more realistic.
Yeah, and like a lot of games we're going to be talking about from Namco today, their cabinets were extreme. They weren't just walk up, joystick, and a couple buttons for most of these games. They were huge, like installation pieces. They were just beautiful, lots of custom parts that you didn't see in other cabinets. So popping in a few extra speakers was not a big problem for them.
Yeah. So do you have any more information you can give us on Quattro Play before we move on to our next track?
Well, the Quattro Play itself, it's the program. It emulates the Quattro sound driver.
Right.
And lets you play any music and sound effects from the games that use the sound driver, by using the original ROMs, of course.
Yeah, and it sounds incredible. We've been playing with it and just having a blast. You can do a lot of different channel soloing, muting. You can go to different sub-songs and kind of listen to how the songs were constructed, and I think that's what makes it so unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a completely different way to hearing this music than anyone has ever heard it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And the way that you're hearing it in this episode is going to be the best way currently to hear this music. So thank you very much for making Quattro play, CTR.
It's one of the reasons why we're so excited to have you on.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Anyways, let's get into our next track.
This track is from another game, which is quite similar to Ridge Racer, but instead of cars, it has motorbikes instead. And the composers were mostly the same. They introduced a few new composers, but this song is composed by the same guy, Shinji Hosoe. But it's called Winride Kids, and it's from Cybercycles.
You just heard Winride Kids from Cybercycles, composed by Shinji Hosoe.
Yeah, this is a shredding track.
Yeah, very rock and roll.
Oh, I was just like getting an adrenaline rush just listening.
Mm-hmm.
This is excellent. I love the just the guitar samples. I think even though they're 8-bit, they sound so clean. It just sounds so good.
The samples may be 8 bits, but the mixing isn't 8 bits. It sounds of course better.
Right.
Yeah, no, I definitely loved the keyboard slides and stuff in the beginning, and it really had that fast-paced tempo, and it, like you said, it really gets your adrenaline going. And even though I've never played this game, I could really see like really loving this track with motorcycle racing, because motorcycle racing always seemed like a step above like car racing, a little bit more dangerous,
a little bit more hardcore.
Yeah, like it felt like even faster paced, so I could see this track really fitting really well with this game.
Yeah. Now, this came out for the Namco Super System 22, which is similar to the System 22, but it has a little bit higher poly rate and more special effects. And it was released in 1995, developed and published by Namco, and composed by Shinji Hosoe. And I'm not sure how many times we've talked about Hosoe-san on the show before, but I'm pretty sure it's a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot.
Yeah, he went by the handle Megahung or Megaten, also Sampling Masters Mega and just Mega. But he is a Japanese composer from Gifu, which is, it's pretty cool because Gifu is, there's an area, actually me and my wife went out there last year. There's a place called Gero Onsen, and it's famous, super well known for, you know, the hot springs.
Yeah.
And that's where he's from. And it's a really quaint little town.
That's cool.
But this guy's just, I guess, just jamming over in Gifu.
Yeah.
Anyways, at age 18, in 1987, he started working at Namco as a sound tester, but then he started composing music for their arcade titles a few years later. Some pretty major ones are Ridge Racer, which we came in with. There's Ridge Racer 2 and Rave Racer, also Cyber Sled and Dirt Dash. And then in 1997, he left Namco to work at another company called Eureka, where he did compositions for like the Street Fighter EX soundtracks, IS internal section for the PlayStation, custom robo for N64. And then finally in 2000, he left Eureka and created his own sound company called Super Sweep, and hired on a bunch of, I guess, past co-workers and colleagues like Ayako Saso. And this guy's a beast, man. He's done so much music for so many games, and all of his soundtracks, I think, are just stellar. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, and he continues that trend like we've been seeing in a lot of past episodes, where composers are starting in their teens and starting on big stuff and really getting their careers going really early, which allows him to have the time to, I mean, just go crazy with games.
Right. CTR, are you a fan of Hosoe's work?
A bit, I would say. Actually, a lot, I would say. I'm very much a fan.
Nice. What would you say your favorite soundtrack of his is?
Dragon Saber.
Oh, well, that's one of his earlier titles.
Yeah.
So this game, though, motorcycle racing.
Yeah.
Just racing around laps. I mean, I don't know. I never actually played this.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play this one either, but you can kind of, guess this cabinet had an actual motorcycle body that you sat on, and you kind of leaned to turn and stuff like that.
It's a bit like an earlier game developed by Sega called Hang On.
Oh yeah. It's
yeah.
a lot like Hang On, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the early motorcycle racing games had a lot of similarities. I really got into like Road Rash and stuff like that as a kid, and it kind of spiked this whole motorcycle racing craze that I got into for a little while, because like I've said on the show, I love racing games. Even though I've never played this one, I could definitely see myself being pretty excited about it.
Really get into it. Now, I tried this out in MAME, and it just does not work very well, because you need that kind of left-right swing, actual controller, or bike body frame to sit on to actually get the right experience. But it does look really clean. The graphics are very pretty. Soundtrack is incredible. CTR, why did you pick this track?
I like the guitar sound in just this song. The other song kind of felt a bit forced, I guess. This one feels pretty more natural than other songs, so I picked this song.
Yeah.
It was released by Namco for the Namco Game Sound Express Volume 23, Cyber Cycles by Victor Entertainment. So you could actually just go pick up this soundtrack at one point. I don't know if it's still in circulation, but yeah, you could pick it up.
Yeah, I'm sure in Japan it's probably still in circulation. Those awesome stores that I get pictures of all the time.
I probably would have run across it at one point and just been like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Anyways, there was a lot of other titles that came out around this time, too.
Yeah, some really big ones, like Alpine Racer, Tekken 2, Mock Breakers, and one of our favorites, the Outfoxies.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, let's get into our next track. This is from Alpine Racer. This is one that I picked out, and then James gave me the thumbs up on it.
Oh, yeah.
This is called Give It Together for the Namco Super System 22, composed by Takayuki Ishikawa.
You just heard Give It Together from Alpine Racer, composed by Takayuki Ishikawa.
This song has some interesting piano solos, I guess. It's something that Ishikawa is famous for.
Yeah.
Pretty much all his songs has one of those piano solos or keyboard solos. And they are quite long, and usually they're as long as the entire song, maybe a bit shorter. He doesn't focus on the other parts of the song, just the solos mostly.
You know, I wish we knew more information about the guy. So Takayuki Ishikawa, not to be confused with Takayuki Ishikawa from Konami's Beat Maniac titles.
Right.
He worked on a few others like Great Sluggers, Nebulous Ray with Masahiro Fukuzawa, Dancing Eye, and Namco Classic Collection Volume 2. But other than that...
And Volume 1.
Oh, and Volume 1, yeah. And but other than that, we don't really know much about this guy. He went by the handle Ishikawa, but that's about it. But you could definitely tell his style, especially like CTR was saying, with those keyboard solos, very prevalent in all of his music, where he kind of blows off the rest of the track and just really focuses on those. Yeah, it's, I guess, a trait of his.
Yeah, no, I really like this track a lot. We were on the fence with a few different tracks from this game, and we were kind of going back and forth, and it was a little bit hard to pick, but this track just, to me, felt so great. It was much smoother and mellow than like the last track we listened to. And for a game where you're skiing, to me, it gave me this warm, kind of wrapped up feeling. Like the whole track kind of like surrounded me, and it made me feel really good. So mellow, but it's still got this really great pace to it, which I really like for racing, on skis. So,
it's weird for me. This didn't really feel like a skiing racing game soundtrack.
Right.
It had. I mean, maybe if I was riding the gondola up to the top of the mountain, this music would play.
Yeah.
It would have a little bit more mellow, kind of I'm floating over the trees kind of feeling.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily give me that adrenaline rush as, I don't know, maybe, the Ridge Racer track or even the Cybercycles one.
Yeah, and I think skiing kind of fits into a different type of subgenre of racing, because it's really beautiful, like all the snow and the trees, and it's a different type of sport. Like regular racing or motorcycle racing is a totally different type of person than skiers. So I kind of like that, but I do know what you mean, where it sounded to me a little bit more like a mall type track, or like riding an escalator than like, racing down a hill going super speed that, you could totally get killed by hitting a tree. But
yeah.
But I think some of the song in this game has this weird, what I call a Sega feeling. It kind of reminds me of some other Sega games like Sega Rally.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of got that like twinkle feel to everything, I guess, which to me kind of reminds me a little bit of Sega.
Yeah. Now, this OST was actually released in 1995 as Volume 25 of the Namco Games Sound Express library. And so, back then in 1995, this was, flying off the shelves. No, I don't know. But
maybe in Japan. I don't know, But like we mentioned with a lot of the other games we've talked about today, this had an extreme cabinet set up for it. It wasn't just some regular game. You actually stood on like skis and you had the poles. So this is definitely another game that's not going to play too great in MAME or something like that. So you kind of got to experience it firsthand, which is kind of sad. I've never seen this cabinet anywhere.
Actually, this game does not play that bad with a controller in MAME. You can actually, it kind of plays like a console game with a controller, so it isn't that bad. The first game feels a bit easy with a controller. The second game actually gives a bit of a challenge, and the stages are kind of more interesting in the second game. But I don't like the music as much.
Yeah.
Oh, so the music for the second game is just not nearly as good?
No, it isn't.
That's Alpine Surfer, right?
No, the second game is Alpine Racer 2.
Oh, okay.
Then that was followed up by Alpine Surfer, but that game isn't working in MAME.
That's right. No, I thought the sound was pretty cool, but the game itself is kind of a gimmick. It would be a blast to play in the arcade, but it's not one of those games that you're going to be like, oh man, I got to get back to the arcade, man. I got to get on this. I got to get on those skis. I got to hit the slopes.
Yeah, really fighting for that top spot on with your initials and stuff like that.
And I think a lot of Namco, their whole idea behind some of these arcades was really just pure entertainment. It's something that anybody, a couple is out on a date, they go by a Namco arcade. They, they're having fun together, and they, play these games, and they just enjoy, being kind of ridiculous, like skiing or on a motorcycle or, all sorts of stuff. And I think that is kind of Namco's forte in the arcade market.
Right. It feels to me like a whole different style of attract mode. Like there's a lot of games where they have really cool track mode music and these awesome, cutscenes in the beginning to kind of suck you into the arcades, where the machines look very similar to the machine next to them, where as you're walking by some of these Namco systems, you're just like, whoa, there's like a set of skis. I totally want to try that. Or, these giant cars, or, some of the other systems we're going to be talking about later, just extreme to just visually to see when you're walking around.
But the best thing is the exercise machine.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Did you have Alpine Racer over in Sweden?
No, I haven't seen it. I can always say that all the games I saw at the arcade I've been in so far, but the last time was Sega racing games and some title racing games.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. What was it? Was it Sega, the Aqua game where it's like a rail shooter underwater?
Oh yeah, they had the Ocean Hunter. It's called.
Yeah, Ocean Hunter, where you have the harpoons and you like play.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I played that one. It's pretty weird.
I've never played that one.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get into our next track. CTR, what do we got?
Next track is from Kart, another racing game that probably didn't see a release outside Japan, and it's a kart racing game. Mm-hmm. The song is called Regret, according to this ROM anyway. I don't know what it's actually called, but it's called Regret.
That's good enough for us. All right, this is Regret from Kart Duel, and we'll be right back.
You just heard Regret from Kart Duel, and we don't have a composer name on this one.
We do not. And this was for the Namco System 12, released in 2000, developed and published by Namco. Just a very cool track, though.
Yeah.
And actually, this was CTR. This is one of your picks. Can you tell us why you picked this track?
This is one of the last tracks, last games for the System 12 hardware. It was released in 2000, and by that time, the PlayStation console that it was based on have been quite outdated, and the PS2 just came out and the Dreamcast as well.
So it's kind of late in the life cycle, yeah.
Yes, so this game probably wouldn't have looked very interesting graphically, that is. But the cabinet was quite interesting.
Oh,
it was shaped like a real go-kart and everything.
Right. Now, see, I never played this one in the arcade.
Me
I never
either,
saw it.
but I would have definitely been interested in it. I mean, like you said, the cabinet itself was really cool looking. They had the two different versions. One that just was kind of like a seat with the steering wheel, and then there was another one that had the full go-kart.
Body.
It had wheels, the side rails, everything. It was really, really pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I really like this track. I think it has a very triumphant feel, very athletic, like a good, like you won the gold medal kind of feeling.
It doesn't really match the title.
Yeah, I know. The title doesn't make any sense at all. It's a regret. It seems like you did something horrible, but it's a very feel-good track, I think.
Right. And for me, I think it has it felt kind of like an RPG type track. It felt like there was a bit of a story element to the music, because it kind of goes and it progresses into this real dark area, and then there's this real kind of triumphant just guitar solo that brings you back out of it, which I thought was just insane. It just melted me completely. Yeah. But I thought it was a very, very cool track, and I think I would have been interested in this game had I seen it in real life.
Yeah. Anyways, Regret, awesome track. There is one thing that I wanted to bring up that's really interesting about the track and actually the whole game and the way that it's organized. CTR, could you maybe give us a little bit of information on how sub-songs work?
Each song, it is kind of limitation from back when they had the so-called wave signal generator and early Yamaha sound chips, is that they were limited to 8 channels. So each song didn't have to support more than 8 channels. And since they used this tracker-like format, where it is just one big sound stream with commands for all the channels.
Yeah, it looks just like Pro Tracker or Impulse Tracker, anything like that. Yeah. When they made sound chips that had more than 8 channels, they had to split the songs into several sub-songs that had up to 8 channels each. So the way this kind of works is you have the main track, and then it makes calls to sub-songs, and those sub-songs play simultaneously as the main track. And so let's quickly, using Quattro Play here, let's listen to one of the sub-songs. So let's listen to the first sub-song of this track. So you can hear this is like really just kind of like that rhythm section, right?
It's very kind of bass heavy.
Right. But it does kind of feel a little bit anemic.
Yeah. Well, it kind of has that regret sound to it, I guess.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to sub-song number 2. This is a lot different.
Wow.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like the temple in Zelda 64. Stay with it. Like the Triforce Temple of Light or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, like you discover it and it's very epic.
Yeah. All right, so let's move over to the third sub-song. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this is only 2 voices too. You didn't have to use like the full 8 voices for a sub-song. You can use as many, I guess, as you want within the 8 voice limit. All right, and so let's move over to the last sub-song here. So that's that lead, that kind of trumpety guitar lead.
Yeah, and you can hear it's carrying on that same melody and stuff like that.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Very cool aspect of Quattro Play. And, when Quattro Play is released, you guys can try this out on your own. It's really cool to kind of see the that, like, you know, CTR was saying, that tracker-like format of all the notes kind of scrolling up where the samples actually produced, and kind of looking at the different voices and the different sub-songs. Kind of all this together is just really, really unique about this software, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for video game music fans to kind of poke around with. So CTR, I looked for the composer, you looked for the composer, we fell short. Do you have any thought who this could possibly be?
Actually, I had no idea who composed into this game.
I can't match the style with anybody.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than what we've listened to so far.
Right.
I think it could be the same composer behind another game that was released a while ago called Angler King.
Angler King?
That's about, Angler King, but that's all I know, really. I don't know the composer name of that either.
Oh, dang. Well, falling short again. Where I played most of my arcade games when I was growing up was this place called Malibu Grand Prix, and it was really big in the area that I lived. It's no longer there, unfortunately, but it was a basically a go-kart like kind of arcade. You know, you go outside, play go-karts or mini golf, and then inside was all the arcade machines. And so I can kind of see why they didn't have a kart racing game there, because it didn't make any sense when there was actual go-karts out, you know, outside.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, and like you had mentioned in our last episode, I went on vacation. I went to go visit my family in Ohio, and we actually went go-kart racing. And so
no kidding.
Yeah, because my middle brother Zach and my nephew Connor, they both race go-karts. Actually, my nephew had been racing since he was 4. And they won, you know, a bunch of trophies and stuff like that. So we were driving around trying to look for something to do, and my dad was like, "Hey, there's a go-kart track, and, you know, mini golf too, and an arcade." And
was this song playing when you were racing?
Oh, I wish. That would have been pretty awesome. But yeah, we ended up having a lot of fun, and I was telling you that they actually have still a lot of go-kart parts laying around. Like they still have some go-kart bodies. And I wish that they weren't all the way in Ohio, because I would totally want to make a custom cabinet. Like, I've been wanting to make a racing cabinet for a long time.
Just like this one.
And basically just recreate this Namco setup.
That's awesome. Now, the soundtrack is really lively. The game is really pretty, I think. Have you tried this one out in MAME?
It isn't working.
Oh, it isn't working. Oh, I think, that's right. I tried it out too, and it was just...
It's just a blue screen or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll see it actually work.
And I heard that the ROMs weren't dumped properly, so it won't play unless it's redumped.
Well, there's another reason then.
Yeah.
But I think the soundtrack works really well for this game. I didn't think that go-kart racing was big in Japan, so this must have been kind of aimed at a more Western audience. Is go-kart racing a thing over in Sweden?
It is.
Oh, it is? Okay.
There is a course in the town where I live. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I know in my hometown, it's a big thing. Like, my best friend in high school raced go-karts. And then, like I said, my family raced for quite a while. And we have a go-kart track actually behind our house. So.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. What do you guys do in Ohio? Like out in the boonies?
Drink and
shoot
race
gophers?
Go-karts, I guess.
Shoot gophers.
Yeah.
Anyways, no, it's a really cool track. Let's move on to our next game. This is a track from Rave Racer. So we already heard Ridge Racer. Moving on to Rave Racer. This was composed by Ayako Saso, and the track is called Euphoria.
Heard Euphoria from Rave Racer, composed by Ayako Saso.
This is an awesome track.
Yeah.
Like CTR was saying, this does have a lot more of a techno vibe.
Yeah, very dancey.
Very dancey. A lot more than Ridge Racer, the original. I thought the track is awesome. I love this composer. I think she does an excellent job, and really gets that. It does have a very racing kind of arcade feel to it. The soundtrack. This was actually a track that you picked, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, I love racing games, and this just had that more fast-paced. It felt like it would fit into a setting that's like a city type feel, and I like that little like type sound. It just reminded me of like little kittens or something. I don't know, but it was just a really fun track and really kind of gets you going, makes you feel happy, put a smile on my face.
Yeah. So CTR, what did you think about this track?
Well, this track doesn't use as many samples as the other tracks from this game. I like how it kind of speeds up halfway through the song, and that makes me more excited, I guess, because by that point you're probably halfway through the race.
Yeah, you're probably sweating a little bit. Yeah,
trying to get around some of those cars that are in the lead.
Yeah,
and like I say, I like the instruments.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that it's a cool song. It does fit the game.
Yeah, it has a little bit more of a feeling to me that I like about it than maybe some of the instruments or some of the layout. The melody is really good, kind of fast paced stuff like that. But it's definitely like pumps you up. It's a good feeling.
I think so. Now this was released in 1995 for the Namco System 22, developed and published by Namco, and it was composed by Ayako Saso. Awesome composer. I just said I'm a big fan. I just love her work. She had the alias Aya, or Sampling Masters Aya, and she became interested in game audio after hearing Namco soundtracks to Shadowland, I think it is. The Japanese title is Yokai Dochuki, and also Xevious, which ultimately led her to pursue a career with Namco. And some of the examples of her work include Street Fighter EX 1, 2, and also 3, Tekken 6, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, some of the later Beatmania games, Taiko Drummer, Bushido Blade, Rolling Thunder 2, Forever Blue, and just a ton more. I really like her work.
Those are some big titles there.
Yeah. However, she was really critical to the sound of the Ridge Racer series, and this game being the third entry made it really important because it was kind of like they changed the title, and they were trying to make it a little bit more, Rave, the techno sound.
Right.
They were really trying to kind of, I guess, pull out all the strings on that really kind of Euro techno sound.
Kind of rebrand the series a little bit maybe for a different audience.
Right, so after 7 years of being with the company, Shinji Hosoe and Takayuki Aihara, who worked with her on Ridge Racer, asked her to join them and move over to Super Sweep. When she was at Namco, she was asked mostly to do stuff like, techno and techno and pop style music, but after joining the new company, she became more responsible for a much wider range of like orchestral fusion and stuff like that. So her style really changed over the course of like her career, I think, and especially moving over to Super Sweep. That was kind of the pivot in her actual audio style.
Oh yeah, and moving on to some of the game info. It's another racing game, so there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's like you said, it's the kind of the successor to the Ridge Racer.
It's a prettier Ridge Racer.
Yeah. It comes a little bit later, like you said, third edition in the series.
Yeah, unlike the first two Ridge Racer, which got console ports and something similar to console ports, this game did not get a port to console. It was exclusive to arcades only.
Yeah. Right.
It was supposed to get a release for PC using a special graphics card, but that graphics card wasn't very popular and the game was cancelled on PC.
Actually, CTR sent me this clip, and I was looking and I was like, oh my god. And then all the comments are like, why did this game never come out? It looks so good. It looks so pretty. And it really does. It's a very good looking game for the time. This is still really early. This is 1995. And the game has just this very new look, only 2 years after the original. I think that's pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, when you compare it to the look of the original Ridge Racer, there's a lot more shadows, it's more subtleties. The environments feel like they're a little bit more fleshed out. It felt less like early 3D model racing games, and something a little bit different, which I thought was really cool. It drew my attention right away. I was like, oh wow, what is this? It looks just like Ridge Racer, but a little bit better.
It's like
looking.
An enhanced version. Yeah. Anyways, let's get into another track from Ayako Saso, but move over to the fighting genre. This is Capriccio from Fighting Layer on the Namco System 12.
just heard Capriccio from Fighting Lair, composed by Ayako Saso.
Yeah, we had a double dose with Ayako Saso. This is a really fun track. I love this one. I thought it was super groovy, it's got a little bit of funk. It's almost like the bass is kind of like a tuba at the same time. It's got that kind of that crunchy kind of brassy feel to it. The instruments in the beginning sound like they detune slightly. They kind of drop, but that's how it was composed. And I think that that kind of sluggish kind of detuning sound moving back into it and getting it peppy again really gives it a lot of energy.
Oh yeah, this track definitely had a lot of energy, and it felt like a jam session, which I thought was really cool.
The detune is actually an effect that is very common in the games from Namco at this time. I think they used it ever since they had FM chips and so on, but they kept using it as they progressed to the samba-based sound shapes, and you still get pretty good sounds with it.
And it sounds excellent.
Yeah,
it's a really cool effect that they could add in to kind of make it almost feel a little bit more of a live band.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of got with that jam session feel. Like it felt like people just kind of messing around and grooving off of each other, and because I guess I always imagine like different instruments or different people, even though it's this is all one person composing it on a computer. But I thought it was fun. It was lively. It didn't fit with the character, I thought.
Oh yeah,
because you and I actually sat down last night and we were playing this, and I chose this character to play as, and it's
like a giant wasp human.
Yeah, like it had like a head like the alien from Aliens, but it looked kind of like a Mayan, tribal person. It was really interesting. But the game was fun. We had a lot of fun with it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I think the soundtrack doesn't necessarily fit with some of the characters, but it was a blast to listen to. I hadn't even played the game, and I'd listen to this, and I send it over to James, and I'm like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, oh, yeah, definitely going in the show. Yeah,
you mentioned after previous song that Ayako Saso's style changed a lot when moving from Namco to Arika, and this would be a very good example of that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I agree, because this was developed by Arika and published by Namco in 1999. Yeah, it just has a totally different style than what we've seen before. And going back to the detuning thing, we're going to see that a lot in the rest of the show. We have a few more tracks that really kind of make that detuning sound very prevalent. I think you're going to hear it in this driver. Yeah. Another thing that with this song is that the beginning has an odd time signature. I think it's like 7/8 or something like that. Yeah. And then it switches to 4/4 near the end. It has that kind of breakdown section where it has more of a dancey feel to it, and I think that's when it breaks into the 4/4. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the beginning of this track definitely felt almost like, people getting ready, like warming up and kind of jamming together, and then they kind of groove into this whole new pattern, which I thought was very cool. It reminds me a bit of a previous Namco game called Burning Force. It also has a song that starts with a 7/8 time signature and then changes to 4/4.
Did we play a track from Burning Force before?
I don't know. I know we talk about Burning Rangers a lot.
Oh, well, we talk about Burning Rangers all the time. But no, I feel like we played a track from Burning Force before. Anyways, this OST got a CD release in 1999 by Pony Kamen and Skytron. It came out, I think it was about 3,000 yen. It's about $30. And you can find it on the shelves at your local video game music store today.
If you're in Japan.
If you're in Japan. This game is a 2D fighting game. It's very similar to the style of Tekken.
Yeah, Street Fighter EX.
Yeah, it's
kind of like that.
A little bit more fast-paced. I do like the feel. I think it's much better than the original Tekken, but I think it's not as good as maybe like Tekken 2. It does have a very fast pace, and we played it last night and thoroughly enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun playing this game.
And kind of strengthen that Street Fighter EX, kind of EX Plus. Like I just mentioned, there's actually 2 playable characters from those games. There's Alan Snyder and Blair Dame, so it's kind of strengthens that a little bit. So it kind of adds to that style.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess it's almost like an offshoot, right?
Yeah,
maybe like it's kind of like how Fighting Vipers and Virtual Fighter, they did their Fighters Mega Mix, and they kind of did a little bit of a crossover. And
there's a couple other fighting games that we're going to talk about later on that they kind of borrow characters from different games or different genres and kind of mix them in. So it's not something new, but it's kind of neat to see that it actually matches the genre that character came from.
Right. This soundtrack was composed by Ayako Saso, but it was also co-composed by Takayuki Aihara.
And the sound effects were done by Shinji Hosoe.
It's just a really cool trio of composers making this soundtrack, and I think it is just very well composed, very well done. Anyways, let's move over to our next game. This is another fighting game. James, what do we got?
We have Duelists from SoulCalibur.
All right, you just heard Duelists, Mitsurugi's theme from SoulCalibur on the Namco System 12, which is based on the PlayStation, along with the Namco System 10 and Namco System 11, released in 1998, and this was composed by Junichi Nakatsuru. And the whole soundtrack was composed by a slew of other composers. There was Akitaka Toyama, Hideki Tobeta, Takanori Otsuka, as well as Yoshihito Yano. And this soundtrack, I absolutely adore. This is one of my this was my favorite. This was my first Dreamcast game, and so a lot of these tracks really kind of hit home. It reminds me of when I was a kid in 1999. I went to pick up the Dreamcast, and this was the first title. I brought this home and I played it all night long, all day the next day. I don't even remember when I slept that week because I couldn't stop playing SoulCalibur and also like Sonic and Sonic Adventure and stuff. But this track really feels good. I think it has a lot of very earthy, organic tones to it. The toms, the kind of timpanis are very, just very strong and very. They have a subtlety to them that makes the lead kind of stand out. But it has these very realistic orchestra hits where those timpanis kind of shine, and they just sound so strong and powerful. Yeah, no, and to kind of go into that whole earthy thing, and there was like these woodblock sounds that I thought were really cool. They're very subtle, but I thought it was a nice addition to make it feel very realistic and something a little bit different, because a lot of the synthy stuff is very mechanical sounding, and that is definitely not it's not even a metal sound. So I think that actually goes back to Mitsurugi is like a Japanese samurai or shogun. And that's his character in the game. So I think what the composers were doing, or Junichi Nakatsuru was doing, was trying to kind of usher in some of that that old Japanese sound, the traditional sound, into this very orchestral track. Yeah, I mean, this was a huge track. It felt very big, very orchestral. I loved when those drum hits when they're all hitting all together, and it was just a great track. Yeah. So CTR, you picked this track. Tell us a little bit about it, why you picked it.
Well, I think this track sounds very good, samples are very realistic and very well made, and it fits so well with the game. I think the orchestral sounds, it's and the epic orchestral sounds and the epic battles in the game.
Right. Did you play this game a lot?
Yeah, I played this game quite a bit, and both on MAME and the original Dreamcast.
Yeah. Now, I think it actually looks a lot better and plays a lot better on the Dreamcast than it does in MAME. We played it last night in MAME just to kind of go through the arcade version ourselves. It's a little bit... I don't think the sound is nearly...
It sounds worse in MAME right now because MAME has an old sound chip emulator.
Right. So actually hearing it through Quattro Play is the best way.
Yeah, and the Dreamcast version actually has music directly ripped from the arcade game. That in itself is actually quite impressive, considering they were able to push such a good sound from the starting to age sound chip.
No, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that was impressive about the Dreamcast when people remember it as not impressive at all.
Exactly. I loved this game, though. Like I said, I had a lot of fond memories with it. I always played as Kilik, the guy with the bow.
Yeah, that's who you played as last night.
Yeah, but you whooped me. I didn't
Beginner's luck. I mean, fighting games are not my thing, and I didn't play a lot of SoulCalibur. I knew of SoulCalibur. I've kind of, been up on what's going on with the game across the series, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience with it.
Yeah, this is my first introduction to Astaroth.
Yeah.
From the last episode that we did. No, but I really like playing as Ivy. I thought Voldo was a totally bizarro character. Very, very cool. He can curl up and almost like a snake into weird formations, and he's got just this weird kind of dance to him. He's kind of flowing like water. It's very odd. But
well, we played Fighting Layer first last night, and then going from Fighting Layer to this, Fighting Layer was fun and it felt fast paced, but SoulCalibur was so much more dynamic, so many more moves, and elaborate feeling to the whole game.
Yeah.
The whole half 2D, 3D movement was done so much better. It felt so much more fast paced when you're dodging things. I remember you kept attacking me with a staff, and I was kind of it felt like I did the sidestep, and it just felt so much faster. All those kind of cut scene attacks were really cool.
Right. Anyways, Junichi Nakatsuru. He was responsible for SoulCalibur 1, 2, and 3, also Tekken 5, Tekken Dark Resurrection for the PSP, Ace Combat 5 for PS2, and Venus and Braves. And the soundtrack was released in 1999 by Bandai for about $30 again. It contained 33 tracks and a bonus disc.
Nice.
With some kind of extra arrangements and stuff like that. So
an interesting thing is that Junichi Nakatsuru, this was the only game he composed that used the Quattro sound driver.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it is, yeah. Wow. So he kind of mastered it in that sense.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, I mean, because this is one of, I think all the tracks in the soundtrack are just very well thought out and very well composed. But his contribution was much appreciated because the sound is very good.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move over to another fighting game. James, what do we got?
Okay, next up we have a track from Ehrgeiz, God Bless the Ring. The track is called A Song for the Man of the Future.
All right, you just heard A Song for the Man of the Future from Ehrgeiz, God Bless the Ring on the Namco System 12, released in 1997, developed by Dream Factory and published by Namco, and this was composed by Takayuki Nakamura.
I really like this track. It has,
I did too.
It really has a lot of the things that I like about specific game music. Like, it was deep and heavy, and I really like that a lot.
And it had a little bit of a break dance beat.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
There was like that really heavy, like rumbling drum, and then there was a little that break dance on top of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, I thought this was really cool. What do you think, CTR?
And I think the song is pretty slow for a fighting game, I would say.
Well, this game does play like that. I think there is a lot of very slow tracks. Even the Final Fantasy VII remakes that were done in there, the arrangements are much slower than the original Final Fantasy PlayStation versions.
Well, because that was a lot of those were made of like the battle music and stuff like that, wasn't it?
Right. So I think that it was a conscious decision to kind of slow it down. Why? I'm not exactly sure. Now, we played this last night, and we felt like the music... it kind of fits because the game, it's a little bit frantic. You're running around in this 3D environment. It's a fighter, but
yeah, actually, I would like to add something there because the 3D stages in Ehrgeiz are actually quite impressive for a time. If you look at games like Tekken, the stages were still 2D. We had a 3D background.
Oh yeah.
In Ehrgeiz, the stages are really full 3D. Actually, the surfaces are 3D that you stand on.
Yeah, no, that was a very impressive thing. And even when this game was ported over the PlayStation, it retained those 3D elements to the stages, and I think that is what made it really unique. Now, I actually only played this on the PlayStation until, obviously, recently me and you played it on the arcade. My first experience was the import version of this, because I was like, oh my god, I can play as Cloud, I can play as Tifa, and Sephiroth. What? So
the PlayStation version had much more Final Fantasy characters in the game, which was really cool.
Right. So let's talk about Takayuki Nakamura for a second. He went by the alias Nakataka and sometimes TN, and also Middle Village. And if you look at his last name, the translation is like Middle Village. It's Nakamura is the
cool.
middle Village. That's where he got that alias. But he was a composer and a sound designer that started at the Sega Sound team as a part-time job in 1989.
I'm guessing he was really young.
Yeah, and then he moved around to a different sound department at Sega, and then joined Dream Factory in 1996. 3 years later, in 1999, he left Dream Factory and then started a game audio company called Brainstorm. And he's still doing game audio today.
That's always great to hear.
Yeah, so some of the tracks that he's done, Outrunners, there's Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, Toe Ball 2, which was a very well-loved PlayStation game that is very similar to Ehrgeiz in that sense. A ton of characters. You can play as like a tree, I think. Yeah, it's very, very odd. But he did some stuff for the Genesis, and he also did some stuff for like the Daytona USA Sega Saturn port, Winning 11-9. He did a lot of sound design and sound directing and stuff as well.
Yeah, so he was very heavily influenced in all aspects of like game audio.
Yeah, but they did release this soundtrack in its CD form in 1998 by Digicube. And it was a 2-disc set that had about 60 tracks. There's some kind of rearrangements, there's some original stuff in there, but it's a pretty cool kind of package.
The first disc had all the music from the arcade version, and the second disc had music from the PS1 version. PS1 version had a role-playing game modes, RPG modes. So
Right. That's kind of a cool thing that they were able to kind of package that together.
Yeah, and one thing that was really interesting about this game is that for a fighting game, it had a little bit of a different feel to it. It wasn't so much like punch kick, like crazy combos. It had a little bit more of a wrestling feel to it that Dream Factory's Tobal series definitely had. So it was kind of neat to see that correlation between other games that Dream Factory made and how it stood out compared to other fighting games.
Another thing with this game is that it feels very much story-driven compared with some other fighting games, in that you actually have cutscenes, and the stages in a game are actually kind of related to the story. That you fight on a train where you're on the way to like Egypt or something, and then you fight inside the pyramids and stuff.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely neat to see like how some fighting games had no story, and then some fighting games had minimal cutscenes, and then to see something like this that had the stages were kind of developed into this story that if you paid attention to, that it kind of created this whole feeling that added to the characters and the single player mode or stuff like that. So it was kind of neat.
I was telling you last night that because we were playing it last night, I hadn't played this game since I played it on PlayStation when I imported it. I played it for a good few months and stuff, and then I had never played it since, so I don't remember too much about it. But then playing it again last night, it does. I don't know if it lives up as well as other games around that time, but I think that it's still kind of fun to play and go back to, especially to play as these Final Fantasy characters if you were a fan of the series.
No, that's definitely one of the big notable things about this game is that it had some Final Fantasy characters, and like you said, you played the PlayStation version, which had the most characters. I mean, it had Sephiroth, Yuffie, Vincent, Zack. I mean, there were so many characters that kind of took over that game, which if you were a big fan of that for the PlayStation 1, which most people had Final Fantasy 7. This could definitely be a big drawing factor with making this game very popular.
I think many people who bought this game actually saw it as a Final Fantasy fighting game.
No, I agree. In fact, that's how I bought it. I bought it with that idea in mind, like, oh my god, these are Final Fantasy. I get to fight Final Fantasy characters.
And then much later they made an actual Final Fantasy fighting game.
Right.
But I mean, right off the bat, I mean, there was so many Final Fantasy characters. There were almost as many as some fighting games had characters in general. Like I remember getting Marvel Superheroes for PlayStation 1, and it had like 8 characters in it. And that's like, I mean, if you count up the Final Fantasy characters, that's almost that number right there. And there's all these other characters to play as too.
Anyways, on a lighter note, let's play our next track. This is Sun J99 Mix Jazz Groove from Paka Paka Passion.
All right, that was Sun J99 Mix Jazz Groove from Paka Paka Passion. Yeah,
that is so groovy. So just a lot of a lot of energy, a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that was one thing that I really liked about it was the energy. I am horrible at rhythm games. I mean, absolutely horrendous. But I love the music from rhythm games so much, just because there's a lot of these games. There's so much more room for music and samples, and like in this track, voice samples and things like that. It's to me, it makes me a little bit sad because it's like loving art but being colorblind. Like I'm horrible at these games. So
no, I think that the track overall has some really cool soloing, some really cool grooves. It kind of goes into this piano solo that I really enjoyed. Now this doesn't loop; it's a one-shot deal.
Right.
Would have been a great ending track, but we didn't. We put it right in the middle of the show. No, this was composed by Takayuki Aihara, and also went by the alias John or JQGQ or J99, however you're reading it.
Well, and if you've been paying attention, they were also involved in the Fighting Layer soundtrack that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And anyways, he joined Namco in 1991 and was assigned to composing for both arcade titles and their theme parks, such as the Namco Wonder Egg.
Man, Japan must be a wonderful place.
It's a glorious place for video game music. The Namco Wonder Egg was kind of cool because it was basically kind of this theme park for... they had, different like kind of arcades set up around, but they also had, like if you go to like Dave and Buster, they have the basketball games,
right,
and,
right.
The more physical kind of styled stuff as well. And
they also had a 16-play version of Galaxian 3.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's just really kind of cool thing that I wish we got here in the States. And CTR is probably thinking, I wish we got that in Europe too. But a really cool composer, really cool track. CTR, you picked this track. Why?
Well, first of all, it's long. It feels unique for the whole song. It doesn't get boring in any way, I think. And it has that iconic sound of the composer. That I've heard it ever since one of his first games at Namco, that being Knuckleheads.
Oh, yeah,
Knuckleheads.
Yeah, he did leave Namco and join Eureka, which was, we talked about earlier, a company that specializes in just game audio, and then stuck around until 2000 when he created his own sound company called Studio Carnival. And I guess there was a few years he had some downtime and did some contract work for pachinko company and a slot company as well, and was doing some kind of stuff for them. It was called Epicurus to do their machine audio, but then he returned back to his own company, Studio Carnival, full-time in 2009. When he was at Namco, he did Ridge Racer 2, Rave Racer, Cyber Cycles, Dirt Dash, and Soul Edge. Major titles.
Huge.
For Namco, And then at Eureka, he did the Street Fighter EX 1, 2, and 3 games, the trailer for Bushido Blade, Tetris the Grandmaster, and Battle Garega. And then his own company, Studio Carnival, he had done the arrangements and programming or sound programming for Fighting Spirit, Hajime no Ippo, which was a really, really big series in Japan. It's like a kind of a punching game where you have to basically hit this punching bag as hard as you can to get your score.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really, really odd.
Talk about physical games.
Yeah. And oh my God, I think I almost broke my hand on that thing because the pads had already started wearing down, and I still tried to hit as hard as I could. Anyways, he also did Dragon Guard and Children of Mana for the Nintendo DS and a bunch of other stuff, as well as some orchestration.
That's nice. That's a pretty meaty resume that he's got there.
Yeah, no, really, really cool composer, and I think the track kind of speaks to that. Now, the reason I think why it's a one-shot deal is because it's a rhythm game. So you pick the track,
right?
You play through it once, and then you get the end of the track, and you're done.
Yeah, there's no gray area as to when the level ends, like a racing game or anything like that.
Right.
It's like once the track is done, it's over. That's
done.
the end of the level. You scored as many points as you could.
Yeah, it's the same as like the Beatmania titles or the Poppin' Pop. I forgot what those are called. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one reason why I like a lot of rhythm games is the music. It's predefined how long it's going to be, so you know how long the level's going to be, so you know how much time you need to make the track for, so you don't have to do a lot of loops if you don't want to.
Yeah. Now, this wasn't actually a Namco game. This was developed and produced by Produce.
Yeah.
That was the name of the company.
And at that time, Aihara had already left for Eureka, so he probably worked on that game as a subcontractor or something.
Exactly, yeah. I guess what you have to do is you have to slide these discs. So you're playing this. Say me and you were playing because we played last night,
right?
And one person's on one side of the screen, the other's on the other, and the rhythm as it comes down, you press the right button. I think there's 4 buttons.
Like there was like
colors.
red, blue, green, yellow, or something like that.
And when you hit the button in the right sequence, a disc slides over to the other player, and it starts growing the platform that they're on.
Right.
And when they hit the top, it's game over for them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's less of like how bad you're doing. It's more of like trying to destroy the other player, which is kind of a unique thing on some of these rhythm games. It's more of like how good can you get a score, like how perfect can you make these beats, rather than trying to destroy somebody else.
Right. And I mean, I think that was one thing that was really cool about this rhythm game, because it felt more like a puzzle type game, something like Puzzle Bobble or something like that, where you're really messing with the player based on how well you're doing, and that kind of adds like a frazzled state to the other player.
Speaking of puzzle games, let's move over to our next track. This is Georian from Mr. Driller on the Namco System 12, composed by Masaru Shiina.
You just heard Georian from Mr. Driller, composed by Masaru Shiina, and it was developed and published by Namco in 1999.
This track is so fun.
Yeah.
It has a very Wild West, I guess, theme to it.
Yeah,
It's
I was
really
thinking
cool.
more bagpipe Celtic.
Really?
But, yeah.
Okay, I think the guitars, the kind of acoustic strumming in the back had that, and then the pan flute coming in gave me a very Wild West feel.
Yeah.
I just really like this track. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, any way you divide it up, it's a cool track for a really super fun game.
Yeah. What do you think about it, CTR?
I like this song. It changes very often. The sound of it changes very often.
Yeah, it does go through different iterations, which make it kind of more enjoyable to listen to, because you're listening to the first part, and then within just like 10 seconds, it completely changes pace and goes through these different iterations. Like, I was talking about the pan flute, but there's also just a normal kind of flute sitting in there, and the guitar changes from like kind of this rhythm, almost like a Stratocaster kind of feel, or a Telecaster kind of feel, and then you get this very kind of I guess dusty old like acoustic steel string guitar in the background playing. You want to solo out this channel real quick? Hang on. Yeah, we have Quattro play, we can do it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's listen to that real quick. Hang on. See what I mean? It's so clean.
Yeah, and for me, that's not something I would have expected to hear from a game when I, look at screenshots and
Mr.
stuff like
Driller.
this. Yeah.
I know. Masaru Shiina is an excellent composer, and he went by the alias Go Shiina, I guess, to make it a little bit easier for the Western audience to pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Go Shiina. Yeah, that's pretty easy. You can't mispronounce Go.
Yeah.
He started with Namco in 1997, but he originally joined as part of their in-house band, and he was responsible for a bunch of arcade titles. There was World Stadium 98, Hammer Champ, Mr. Driller 1, 2, and Mr. Driller G, and then Klonoa 2 with a bunch of other people, Taiko Drum Master, God Eater, so he did basically the God Eater series.
Yeah.
And then he works on some various Tales series titles and some of the later Tekken games. But even though he worked on quite a few titles for Namco, he was actually in charge of the company's non-game music, like their anime adaptations, movies, and so forth.
Yeah, and that was one thing I always loved about some of these other companies where they would have like anime versions of the game. So there's like, you'd see things where like it's a certain genre of game, and then you see the anime version, you're like, oh wow, that's what this whole world is like.
I wonder if they made a Mr. Driller anime.
Oh,
that was what I was going to mention.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So
the samples in this song, especially. The composer had problems adapting to the sound format used by the sound driver Quattro, and he mentioned that you had to compose songs using Excel, and then they were somehow converted to the sound format. And
wait, back up. You said you had to compose songs in Excel?
In Excel, yeah.
Like Microsoft Excel?
Yes.
Oh my God!
Wait, what? Okay, you got to explain this.
Yeah, that's definitely a first.
Yeah. I read it in an interview with him anyway. So I'm not sure if we meant exactly literally Microsoft Excel or if we meant the tracker in general, because it is actually quite similar to Excel.
I think that he probably said Excel to give you an idea of what it was like. But yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But anyway, he had problems sequencing music in Excel, I guess. In Excel or the tracker. So this song uses a bunch of small sample fragments that make up the song, and they are all played at the same pitch and just puzzled together to make the song.
Right.
And when you solo out the channels, you can actually hear the limitation of the chip. It can only do 8-bit channels, 8-bit samples.
Right.
And that becomes quite clear when they play the samples from this song.
We just listened to that guitar sample, and I think it sounds still really, really clean. But if you listen carefully, you really can make out that it's an 8-bit sample.
Yeah, he did mess with a bit with the dynamic range to make it less noticeable, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the song as a whole has a lot of samples, so you don't really hear it when it's all mixed together.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, even with all those trebles, this is a really dynamic and beautiful track.
Yeah. So actually, CTR, could you tell us about, we're talking about soloing channels, and we just soloed that guitar sample out. Can you tell us how the soloing and the muting of different voices actually works in Quattro Play?
It's actually quite simple. I just use a bit mask, and when soloing a channel, you just set the beat for the voice, and when outputting the samples, I can just check if the beat for this voice is set, then I'm muting it, and so on.
It's so fun. Like, seriously, I'm having so much fun with this software. Like, it's like a carnival, like, on my computer. I'm having so much fun. James is like, his mind is just exploding.
Yeah, it's Studio Carnival over here.
So, did you play this game?
I play this game a little bit as well.
Okay.
It's a quite fun puzzle game, and it gets pretty frantic though.
Oh yeah, no, I played the hell out of this game.
Yeah, well, and you and I played it together at California Extreme last year.
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, like, when we were playing it, nothing else existed. I could have sat and played that game all day, probably.
Oh, yeah. I got this for the Dreamcast, and I actually bought the actual copy. This was when Dreamcast piracy was quite rampant.
Yeah.
And I was downloading a lot of games, like playing a lot of pretty much everything that got dumped. I was playing, and this came out, and I was like, you know what? I want to own this copy.
Yeah.
I want to own this game, and because I worked at a video store at the time. This was still I was still in high school, and so I picked this up. I played this every single day because I took the city bus to school, or I drove based on what day of the week it was. If I could afford gas, I would wake up, play this game for at least 30 minutes, and then go to school.
Yeah.
And get in time for my first class.
Gotta start your day out right. For kids, that's your coffee.
And I did that. Oh, yeah. And every day I did this for probably the good portion of a semester.
Yeah.
Like half a year I played this game.
Yeah.
Every morning.
No, for me, I'm not a morning person. There's very few games that will get me out of bed earlier than I need to. But I could see if I had a Dreamcast, this probably would have been one of them. It's super fun, bright, colorful, and it feels like even though a lot of the levels are the same, you play the same level over and over, you can find new paths, you can create new ways that are things to avoid, and it's so much fun. Like I can't even express how much fun I had playing at a California Extreme.
Right. Last time I was in Japan, I actually ran into this cabinet. It was in an Astro City cabinet, and a big, beautiful vertical display. And I really enjoyed it again. Here I am. My wife's waiting for me at home, and she's like, "Hey, you coming back?" I'm at the arcade playing Mr. Driller. That you're like, oh, there's so much traffic. I'm gonna be a while. I told her, so the train's not for another 20 minutes. And of course that's the express train, so it was like in the next 5 minutes. But I was like, I got to get another round in, so it was really cool to kind of revisit this. And this was just a few months ago. So, anyways, let's move over to our next track. This is not a puzzle game,
right?
This is from Golgo Jusang Kiseki no Dando. And the track is called Story BGM 1, and it's composed by Jin Watanabe.
You just heard Story BGM 1 from Gogo 13, developed by Aiding and Rising, published by Namco, composed by Jin Watanabe.
Awesome, dude. This track is so chill, so smooth jazz. This is like, I want to, sip on a martini when I drink this. I want to sip on a martini when I listen to this soundtrack. It's just so chill, so relaxed.
I liked how there was really nice drums, piano, and even percussion, but then there's like this kazoo on top of it. Like I thought, like, wow, this doesn't really fit, but I thought it was kind of neat. It added to like this odd sense of this game, which I noticed when I was playing it. I was like, oh, I remember when we first were working on arcades, like making game screens and stuff, so we're scrolling through games, and I remember this series, and then finding out that it's, it has an anime, it has manga,
hugely popular,
huge following, and then
huge,
and I thought it was really cool. I really liked this game and this style of arcade game.
Yeah. See, CTR, you actually picked this track. Why Golgo 13? Why BGM 1?
Yeah, this song I actually found out while researching on the sound driver. I listened to various games using it, and this song struck me. It's very clean, as you said, and I really love the jazz feel of it as well.
Yeah, it's very relaxing to listen to, and what I like too is that if you're watching in Quattro play as it goes through, you can see the tempo changes. It has like the drum solo that is just remarkable. It's just so clean, and watching it through almost like this tracker-like interface in Quattro play is really cool because it'll speed up, and you can see each of those samples kind of go through their sequence and the it's just a really awesome feature of this software to be able to see how the composers actually wrote this music. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things when I see anything that's playing in a tracker, like, it's totally mesmerizing seeing the notes actually playing and watching everything scroll up, and you can see like the labels and everything, and it just blows my mind because I have no musical ability, I have no musical talents, like I said, no rhythm at all, but to see this kind of play out is really cool.
If you're into video game music, this application, this is awesome.
Yeah. And I'm actually planning to release this software along with this podcast.
Oh,
nice.
So that's why I've been delaying it for so long. I thought it would fit well together.
Awesome. So today this episode drops. We'll put a link in the show notes to where you can download it and try it out for yourself. Obviously, you have to get the ROMs on your own, but you'll be able to play with it and experience. And you know what? Maybe I will put a little tutorial together for like a newbie, kind of a newbie.
Someone like me.
Yeah, so basically James could figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
And then if you still don't know how to use it, you can always drop by in the VGM Reaps IC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And bug CTR, or you could bug me because I know how to use it now. And also, this is going to be compiled for Linux, I believe, and Windows. Yes?
Yeah, and the source code also builds on Mac. And this is thanks to SDL, which is the library used to make this software. And it's used by games as well. It's a very big library. And it has all the functions you need if you want to write multi-platform games and software.
Yeah. So it's a really fun piece of software. It's super portable. Anyways, let's move over to our next track. This is from Nebulous Ray, and the track is called Exio.
Listening to Exio from Nebulous Ray, developed and published by Namco in 1994, composed by Masahiro Fukuzawa, and also composed by Takayuki Ishikawa, but he didn't do this song.
He didn't do this track. He composed part of the soundtrack, but I think this song was so cool. That really kind of soaring, top end melody is just. I guess it's like a new take on some of the old shooters that I loved, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I thought it had a nice quick pace, a high range melody. I thought it was really cool, very heroic, which was pretty fun. This game really, as soon as you start up, gets right into it, which was kind of neat to feel like I'm doing something very heroic. So I like that a lot.
Yeah. What did you think about the CTR?
The music, I like this. I like some of the music in this game, but this isn't actually my favorite song for this game. Actually, I like Ishikawa's work much more in this game.
He has some really good tracks in here, but it was a executive decision. We had to pick one, and so we went with this.
And that's fine for me, really.
I think this song is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe in our Volume 2 episode,
right?
We'll get to some of the other Ishikawa tracks.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again, and we'll display some more Ishikawa.
Of course. Also, this song is actually pretty simple because it doesn't have that many channels. It only uses 12 channels in total. And the ship has 42 voices, so it isn't exactly fully utilized here.
Yeah, it's not overly complex, and I think the game in general is doing more graphically than it is in the audio department.
Right.
Something you will notice if you play this game in MAME is that the music and sounds play way too fast.
They sound way different, and so we were listening to Quattro play, and James and I were like, wait a minute, I don't remember this playing in the game.
Yeah, no, we were playing it last night, and because one of the reasons why I wanted to play it was because there's a very 3D element to this game, and I was wanting to really look and see if it felt more like full 3D models or pre-rendered 3D, and they were just like, wow, this is. It felt very much more frantic than because everything was playing differently. So it was very interesting to play it last night compared to what I've seen elsewhere.
Yeah, so this was actually.
I think the game visually feels very inspired by a game released previous year called Rave Force. But Rave Force has a lot of more sprite scaling and things, so it actually feels like you're moving to a different place in 3D. But it's actually all 2D drawn sprites and stuff.
Right.
This game has more pre-rendered 3D stuff.
Yeah, but that camera was still pretty crazy.
Yeah, it felt almost a little bit awkward to play because the camera really moves left and right too much.
Yeah,
the first stage of this game really focuses on the parallax scrolling.
Right.
And it really seems weird because the things in far behind scroll much faster than the foreground.
Right, it's like a reverse parallax scrolling, almost like when we were playing Gym Power in 3D without the 3D glasses.
Yeah. Feels very awkward.
Yeah, it was, and that was one thing I noticed across the board when people were playing this game is that the screen scrolling was something that really kind of bothered people at first.
I think the game is fun. It's just too hard to concentrate on your what you're shooting because of that scrolling.
And yeah, the last stage actually has some weird palette effects. So the colors change like constantly, and it looks hypnotizing.
Oh wow!
Well, it isn't actually quite the last stage. It's one of the last stages.
Yeah, and I did see that this game is not terribly long. I think people were beating it in 20 to 30 minutes or so. So playing it on MAME and stuff like that, you pump in enough quarters, you can get there. But I could definitely see that. And I, with the graphics of this game, I thought really like that pre-rendered 3D was kind of lost in so much of the action. You almost didn't need it.
It was almost a gimmick,
yeah.
But it did look really cool. I mean, if you focus on it, it does kind of. All right, I get it. It's kind of cool. It
feels modernized for that time.
Now, this was for the Namco NB1 system, and it was released in 1994. And Fukuzawa also went by the alias Charlie, and was one of the original Namco sound staff, and then was employed to work primarily on Namco's arcade titles. Now, we talked about him back when we did our Outfoxies episode, way back in episode 9.
Still one of my favorite games, arcade titles that we've stumbled upon. I mean, it's such a fun game.
Yeah, actually CTR picked an Outfoxies track and we're like, dude, we just played that.
Yeah, we just played that like 2 years ago.
It was a really good track though. And he did the composition as well as a few different titles like Dancing Eyes,
which we played a track from in that Outfoxies episode, which is not necessarily a game for kids.
Yeah. And then he also did the soundtracks for Suzuka 8 Hours, World Stadium 97, Namco Classics Collection Volume 1 and 2. There was Wizardry Empire 2, Heavenly Guardian for the Wii and PS2, Devilish for the NDS, and then a Dojin 2D fighter called Akatsuki Blinskov. And man, like another 30 titles or so under his belt.
Yeah.
Nowadays, he's freelancing and puts out his own music on a site called Audio Jingle. where you can purchase music that he's done and use it in your game. So like he'll do a track and it would be like $15, and you can use it in whatever application you want, kind of royalty free. So he's you can use it without him collecting the royalties on use.
Sounds like a bargain.
Yeah.
It's kind of like audio clip art.
Exactly.
High quality audio clip art.
But he's having fun doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he's still in the game. Now, let's move over to our next shooter. James, what do we got?
We have a track from Xevious 3DG, and the track is called Area 1.
So you've been listening to Area 1 from Xevious 3DG, published and developed by Namco in 1996 on the System 11 and composed by Ayako Saso.
This is a really cool track.
Yeah.
I think this is another really good example of the detuning effect that we hear in a lot of the Namco sounds using the sound driver.
Yeah, especially the parts when those tiny square wave things show up, and you hear them echoing at the detuned at different points, and it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun track, and this is a really cool game, I think, too.
And the obvious thing, of course, is when the song begins with that bass line. I got that stuck in my head for quite a long time.
Yeah. No, and this is the third track by Ayako Saso. I mean, we had Fighting Layer and Rave Racer, and this is something a little bit different. It's something really cool. To me, it has that kind of mellow, like golf game type track. It's for a vertical shooter. It doesn't really feel like it fits, but it's still very fun. I mean, we played this game last night and had a lot of fun with it, and I really liked it. It made me feel like I was having fun. It was kind of dancey.
Well, I hope that. I mean, that's the point, right? I mean,
well, some games they're designed to stress you out. And,
and
that's games
true,
like especially Maniac shooters are meant to overwhelm you.
Yeah.
And this one kind of like took your hand. This would be a game that if someone wanted to get into Maniac shooters but had like a little bit of a stress issue, this would be something I would introduce them to. I think.
It's definitely not a Maniac shooter. It's not that insane. I was kind of surprised. I thought, okay, this kind of 3D gimmick on an old kind of classic
Right.
Xevious is going to be like, how are they going to pull this off and make it? Are they just cashing in on an old game? But really,
Right.
it's not. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, no, there was definitely some cool things with the different shooting abilities that were made really cool that I could see being really nice in this 3D mode or this 3D version of the game. I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. The soundtrack was released in 1997 titled Xevious 3D G+, which also contained the PlayStation soundtrack. And it came in this 3-disc set with both the arcade and the PlayStation versions. And I think that's really cool. Again, we're talking about the Ehrgeiz soundtrack that had both the PlayStation and the arcade ports. And I think that, for VGM fans, Japanese only VGM fans, they were very happy to kind of receive both ends of the spectrum, both
Right.
versions of this audio.
Well, this was like a whole new spectrum of video games. I mean, before in early games, arcades and consoles were very separate. And then now this was a whole different set of consoles that could handle some of the stuff. You could do decent ports of arcade games. We had talked about a lot of these games. We mostly had played them on the PlayStation and stuff like that, Saturn,
the
stuff like that.
Dreamcast. Right.
That's actually something I would like to add. The PlayStation port of this game, Xevious 3DG Plus, of course, it actually had the original Xevious, an arcade perfect port of that game, as well as the arrangement version from Namco Classic Collection.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And they had the original arcade soundtrack for all versions of the game, as well as an arranged soundtrack.
See,
Yeah.
it's that level of detail that makes Namco's CD releases so awesome, and their ports. And I think that actually is pretty much our last track of the day.
Yeah, our last big game.
Yeah, last big game. So today we covered the Namco C352 and also talked a ton about Quattro Play, this awesome application that is releasing the day this episode drops. And you guys can download it, try it out.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're interested in this program, I mean, CTR is the guy that put this all together for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for all the compliments.
Anyways, awesome show. I think we had a really good selection. This is going to be a long episode.
Yeah, this was a very big expansion pack style.
Right.
Very big. I mean, it just shows you. This is just the tip of the iceberg for what Namco did.
Yeah. CTR, what time is it in Sweden right now?
It's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sticking around to do this with us. I mean,
Well, CTR is the guy who never sleeps. I always give him trouble in the chat room. I'm like, dude, when do you sleep, dude? Because he's up before I am, and he's awake as I'm going to bed. And this guy he's a machine. Anyways, if you want to know more about the show, James.
yeah, you can check us out online at our website, pixelatedaudio.com. You can find our track list. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Pixelated Audio.
Also, if you want to go to our affiliate site, VGMrips.net, CTR is releasing a ton of these packs for this sound chip. Go check it out. A lot of them are going to play. Make sure if you're using the Winamp plugin or if you're using VGM Play, using the most current version to get all the benefits of the sound driver enhancements or additions that he's added in.
Yeah. No, and the site is very, very cool. I actually didn't know that when you rate packs, you can actually see who's rated packs, what they've rated them, when you log in, all that stuff. It's very, very cool. So there's definitely an incentive to not only listen to all this music and then take the time to spend a few seconds, click 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, whatever, and you can kind of be involved in the rating of all these different soundtracks.
Yeah.
We try to have a little tradition in the IRC where we put a random pack every day on IRC and ask people to rate it and tell us what they think about the music.
Oh, we've had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, if you have IRC or if you log in and you join the web IRC client, we'll do a random pack. We'll basically find something that hasn't been rated yet, and we will listen to it together as a group. We'll talk about the pack as a whole, and we'll all rate it. And then after we've got all of our ratings in, we'll refresh the page and see what everybody gave it. It's really fun. So, anyways, that also leads us to giving us a rating.
Right.
If you like the show, if you dislike the show, give us a rating on iTunes. We really appreciate comments or feedback. Want to give a shout out to R. Glasgowy from Canada who gave us a nice review. Just want to say thank you very much. It means a lot to us to hear that.
Oh yeah, when we hear like your guys' excitement and enthusiasm when you post a comment, it really pumps us up.
And you can check out some of our past episodes. We just did one on Astaroth,
right?
The Angel of Death.
Yeah, such a cool soundtrack.
Yochen Hipple.
Yeah. Jinx.
Oh, man. Such a master
of
the Amiga and the Atari ST.
And then we unearthed a very cool Wonder Swan game with Buffer's Evolution. So.
Yeah. Oh, and you can also go back and check out our Outfoxies episode, which was episode 9. Oh, my God. Don't go back and listen to that. We were so... the podcast was so immature at that point.
Yeah.
Anyways. It was still fun, though. The music is good,
at least the music was good.
Anyways, CTR, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about Quattro Play, about the Namco C352 sound chip, and just your expertise in the field.
Yeah, and waiting to release until this episode.
Yeah. You're welcome. I had a lot of fun talking about it.
Awesome.
Well, hey, so the track Taking Us Out. So this is kind of a little special thing we're gonna do here. The track Taking Us Out is from a game called Prop Cycle, and
it falls in line with that whole Namco crazy arcade setup.
Oh yeah, James and I will post a video of the game that we played at Calibur Stream. Prop Cycle is a game where you sit on a bicycle that is you're pedaling to fly through this kind of dangerous terrain.
Yeah, and you're pushing the steering wheel forward and backwards. It's actually a lot of work. I got pretty sweaty.
Oh, yeah.
And you probably didn't hear it, but in one of the stages, your music actually changes seamlessly as you progress through the level. And this is done entirely through the sound driver. So and it can be done through Quattro Play as well.
So kind of explain, how did this work? So you're playing the game, you're moving through the level, and Namco, using this sound driver, can cue different sub-songs or different samples.
Well, actually, it's even more complex than that. They can pretty much change the sequence because the sequence data can actually contain virtual machine instructions that the composer can add into the song. So you actually can add some programming in the sound driver itself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for a game that many people have probably never played, we probably won't have the option to play, and we were lucky enough to get to play this year at California Extreme.
CTR, thank you so much for joining in on this episode. It was a blast having you, and we look forward to our Volume 2 of this Namco sound chip and the sound driver with Quattro Play. The track Taking Us Out is Winwoods, and this is DJ'd by CTR. Thank you so much, and we will see you in a few weeks for the next episode.
This is CTR from VGM Rips, and you're listening to Pixelated Audio, episode 62, featuring the Namco C352 and Quattro Play. This isn't working.
Ridge Racer!